Speedbird 1, Heathrow Tower. Continue approach. Those words are routine in the air traffic control tower at Heathrow Airport. But far below the flight path, the story is anything but ordinary. Beneath the roar of jet engines and among the bustling terminals of one of Europe's busiest air hubs lies a quiet turmoil. Villages that face erasure, residents who feel forgotten, and a decades-long battle between economic growth and community survival. Heathrow Airport, located on the western outskirts of London, has been operating at near full capacity for many years. With over 80 million passengers traveling through annually, it's not just a gateway to Britain, but a major international stopover point. The airport claims that its current infrastructure, consisting of 4 terminals and 2 runways, is operating at 98% capacity. With air travel expected to grow in the coming decades, Heathrow's solution is clear: a 3rd runway. But this proposed expansion has ignited passionate opposition. If built, the new runway would cut directly through 3 historic villages: Harmondsworth, Sipson, and Longford. Entire streets, homes, businesses, and even centuries-old landmarks would be demolished. Generations of residents who've lived in these neighborhoods now face the very real prospect of losing everything to a construction plan that they had little say in. Life on the edge of the runway. Many who live in the affected areas describe a limbo-like existence. They've spent years unsure whether their homes will be taken or spared, and whether to invest in properties that might soon be demolished. Some residents want to leave but are unable to sell their homes, while others are determined to stay and fight for the place they call home. One woman, Justine, has lived in Harmondsworth for over 30 years. She calls the village a plane spotter's paradise, yet insists she's no aviation enthusiast. To her, Harmondsworth is simply home, a quiet suburb with cul-de-sacs, a village shop, a church, and a couple of local pubs. It's a place with deep roots, stretching back to Anglo-Saxon times. But today, the community's future feels fragile. Every year they say it's going ahead, and every year nothing happens. Meanwhile, we're stuck in limbo, she says. This in-between state is tangible. A tour around the village shows abandoned buildings, derelict homes, and properties that have been left to decay. A 600-year-old barn, reportedly the largest timber frame barn in the UK, still stands, a silent witness to the upheaval around it. But the homes surrounding it are either empty, vandalized, or awaiting demolition. Some locals still speak with cautious hope. Others are more resigned. For Angela and Malcolm, who have lived in the area for over 2 decades and worked at the airport for years, the situation is painful. They want to move closer to their children but can't sell their home because of the uncertainty. Our freedom of movement has been taken away, Angela says. We don't want a runway here, but we also want to move on with our lives. It's not just that potential buyers are hesitant, it's also that mortgage lenders won't issue loans for properties under threat of demolition. Even those who might be willing to buy can't secure the financing. As a result, homes sit unsold, families remain stuck, and the community continues to wait for answers. The long road to expansion. The idea of expanding Heathrow isn't new. Plans for a 3rd runway were first proposed in the early 2000s under then Prime Minister Tony Blair. Since then, the debate has seen twists and turns, promises made and broken, and countless delays. Political figures from both sides of the spectrum have weighed in, some vowing to block the expansion, others pushing it forward. One of the most vocal opponents in the past was Boris Johnson, who famously said he would lie down in front of the bulldozers to stop the construction. Years later, he would become prime minister during a period when the project was gaining renewed government support. Critics say the shifting political positions and mixed messages have only made things worse for residents, leaving them unsure whom to trust. In 2018, the UK government formally endorsed the 3rd runway. Supporters argue it's necessary to keep Britain competitive on the global stage, allowing more flights, better international connectivity, and increased cargo capacity. They believe it could unlock billions in economic growth and generate thousands of jobs. But detractors point out the serious social and environmental costs. The proposed construction would affect thousands of residents, destroy historic villages, and contribute significantly to greenhouse gas emissions. Many experts believe the project's timeline is unrealistic, and its projected cost, originally estimated at £14 billion in 2014, has ballooned. Industry insiders now place the price tag between £42 billion and £63 billion, raising questions about how it will be funded and whether it's worth the investment. Heathrow says the expansion will be privately funded, with backing from a consortium of foreign investors, including firms from France, Qatar, Singapore, China, and Australia. The economic justification is based on a study by Frontier Economics, which claims that the third runway could boost the UK's GDP by up to 0.43% by 2050. However, that report was commissioned by Heathrow itself, and while the summary is public, the full findings remain unreleased. This has led to skepticism about its objectivity, environmental and climate concerns. One of the most pressing concerns around Heathrow's expansion is its environmental impact. The UK has legally committed to achieving net zero carbon emissions by 2050. Yet aviation, and particularly international flights, remains a major emitter of greenhouse gases. Heathrow alone is estimated to contribute around 10% of the UK's total emissions. Critics argue that expanding airport capacity directly contradicts the country's climate goals. Professor Benoit Meyer, a specialist in climate law, notes that international aviation emissions often aren't counted in national statistics, creating a loophole. They fall outside territorial jurisdiction, he says, meaning that growth in air traffic could continue unchecked even as domestic emissions fall. Beyond climate concerns, there's the issue of noise pollution. Planes land and take off every 60 to 90 seconds at Heathrow, many flying directly over central London. Studies have shown that prolonged exposure to aircraft noise can lead to increased stress, sleep disruption, and higher risks of cardiovascular disease. The third runway would bring flight paths even closer to densely populated areas, increasing these risks. And there's the matter of location. Unlike other major European airports, which were built outside urban centers surrounded by open fields, Heathrow is tightly hemmed in by residential neighborhoods. It was never intended to grow this large. If planners were building it today, most agree they wouldn't put it here. A legacy of displacement. The tension between Heathrow and its surrounding communities dates back decades. Originally a small farming hamlet, the area was transformed during World War II, when the British government took over the land to build a military airfield. After the war, the site was converted into a public airport. Since then, it has grown rapidly, swallowing up nearby farmland and reshaping the landscape. For many families like the Pursers, who were once prominent local farmers, the airport's growth marked the end of a way of life. One family member recalled how his father gave up farming when it became clear that aviation was the future. Ironically, he ended up working in the very industry that had pushed their farm out of existence. Now history threatens to repeat itself. Entire communities face dissolution, with ancestral homes, schools, and places of worship set to be demolished. Residents describe the feeling of being disposable, seen as obstacles to progress rather than stakeholders in the nation's future. The uncertain future. Despite the government's endorsement, the third runway is far from a done deal. Heathrow must still complete public consultations, gain development consent, overcome legal challenges, secure funding, and conduct environmental assessments. None of this is guaranteed. Experts suggest that, even if approved, construction wouldn't begin for years. The earliest realistic completion date is around 2035, assuming no further delays. In the meantime, residents remain trapped, unable to move forward or let go. Some believe the expansion will eventually happen. Others remain deeply skeptical. It's all talk, one local said. They've been saying the same thing for 20 years. Yet for those caught in the middle, the ambiguity is the worst part. Until a final decision is made, they are stuck, unable to sell, unable to move, and unable to plan their futures. The story of Heathrow's third runway is not just about infrastructure, it's about people, homes, and communities. It's a debate between the desire for economic growth and the need for sustainable, humane development. And for the villages in the flight path, it's a matter of survival. As the years drag on, Harmondsworth, Sipson, and Longford remain symbols of a much larger question. What do we sacrifice in the name of progress? And who gets to decide?